Welcome to this DW Business special, looking at the state of play for Ukraine's natural gas sector. How has it adapted to a state of war? Will Ukrainians have enough energy this winter? And what role can Ukraine one day play in the EU's energy security? Well, to answer those questions and more, we could hardly have been joined by a more relevant guest. Oleksiy Chernyshov is a former Ukrainian government minister and now CEO of the country's biggest state gas company, Naftogaz. Thank you very much for being with us on DW Business. Can Ukrainians rely on Naftogaz to provide enough gas this winter?
Yes, absolutely. Naftogaz has prepared quite an affordable volume of gas for the next winter. We do have 16 billion cubic meters in the underground storages in Ukraine, which is fairly enough to go through the next winter season. Moreover, we have managed to increase the gas production even during the war. We are something like +7 of additional gas production, and we keep on producing regardless of the war situation. I think it is very important that this coming winter, Ukraine will and might count on the gas which has been produced in Ukraine.
But one of the challenges you face in a war situation is, and indeed intelligence officials have indicated this is something that is likely, potential attacks by Russia on infrastructure. Are you prepared for that, should it happen?
Right, we've been suffering from those attacks last winter. They've been significant, and we are definitely being prepared for the new attacks that might come soon. Overall, energy infrastructure is prepared, and we do everything possible to make Ukrainians receive heating and electricity during this upcoming winter.
What about energy bills? I mean, you've been controlling the price of energy bills for Ukrainians. Is that something that's going to continue?
Yes, the governmental decision and overall position of the state is that we cannot increase the bills during the state of war. And Ukrainian people are protected by a certain cap that's been introduced before and is acting now.
But obviously that cap is not very attractive to potential foreign investment in Ukraine's energy sector, and indeed for domestic providers to be supplying that to households rather than to businesses. So how do you tackle that challenge?
Absolutely. Ukrainian energy market requires a significant energy reform, an introduction of market. And hopefully we will do it once the war condition will allow us to do that. Of course, the energy market would attract international and domestic investment into the energy business and would motivate energy efficiency, which has been a long story for Ukraine, which is not very much energy efficient in the households and overall economy.
Naftogaz was the first Ukrainian government entity to go into default after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I understand it has now come out of default, but how confident can Ukrainians be that Naftogaz is still financially stable?
Naftogaz is absolutely financially stable. You're right, the war brings different challenges, and absolutely, Naftogaz has appeared to be in technical default last year. We have managed to find a consent solicitation with our bondholders, and at this very moment, I'm proud to announce that we are fully stable, fully controlled company, and we are moving towards the development and future winter season.
Something that Naftogaz oversees from the Ukrainian perspective is the transit of gas from other countries through Ukraine, of course, Russia being one of those countries. And I think our viewers will be surprised to discover, if they don't already know, that Russian gas is still transiting through Ukraine and into the EU, and it's being bought by EU countries. Is that something that's going to continue? Because that contract between Naftogaz and Gazprom is due to expire next year. Do you want to see a stop to that transiting of Russian gas through, your territory?
Rob, I'm glad you raised this issue. The only reason Ukraine is still transiting Russian gas is to support European Union countries, especially landlocked countries, we do understand the position of the European Union to fully reject and refuse from consumption of Russian gas until 2027. At this very moment, it has not yet happened. And, well, we support European countries during this winter. You're right, the contract will be over by the end of next year.
No renewal.
At this very moment, we are not in a position to renew it, although we might consider that the European Union would raise this issue in the coming month or so.
Well, indeed, you mentioned supporting landlocked countries. Italy is one of the countries that's still getting gas from Russia via the Ukrainian pathway. So what sort of message would you want to send to the Italian government?
I think regardless of the countries that are getting Russian gas, overall European Union consumption of Russian gas is something really special. We all understand that the power and the possibilities of getting alternative gas supplies, especially with LNG terminals, is limited. And it will take time for the European Union to make quite a serious steps to stop consuming Russian gas. As it goes for now, doesn't really matter what country exactly consumes Russian gas. The fact it is being consumed by the European Union. And that is the thing we would definitely expect the European Union to work on.
We've talked about pipeline gas so far. Liquefied natural gas is also coming from Russia to Europe, more so than it was before the invasion of Ukraine. I mean, how do you feel about that? How does the Ukrainian government, which until recently you were a part of, how do they feel about that?
About the transit?
Indeed. Well, the fact that Europe is buying more LNG from Russia than it was.
Well, you know, overall, supporting Russians with buying Russian gas is ridiculous during the war. And we see that Russians have been using natural gas and oil as a weapon. They've been using energy as a weapon. And we say that cheap gas comes at a price. And this price is well known for some European countries and for Ukraine as well. So the sooner we will refuse from overall consumption and usage of Russian gas, the better. And I think that is the main point.
You're actually in Berlin because you're here to talk with German counterparts about the future relationship, energy relationship between Ukraine and Germany. What sort of a role can Ukraine play in the EU's energy security? Because that's something that's very much in flux at the moment.
You might be surprised, but I would say that Ukraine can be a future energy hub for the European Union, a power bank. We all know that Ukraine has a very important and strategic asset, which is the underground gas storage, the biggest, by the way, in Europe, 31 billion cubic meters of capacity that can be used by European countries. Also, Ukraine is third in Europe by the reserves and resources of natural gas. And the more we produce, the better. And understanding that the existing pipe allows to bring this resource to European Union, I'm sure that would bring Ukraine to a position of the future energy power bank for the European Union.
Yes, you can bring the gas from those storage facilities to the EU, but actually the infrastructure still needs to be fully installed for you to be able to get LNG, for example, that the EU imports then into Ukraine. That would require investment. Is that investment likely to happen for as long as Ukraine is in a war?
Obviously, Ukraine is limited in terms of international investment during the war. Moreover, we all understand Ukraine requires significant change. Significant reforms should be implemented in Ukraine as soon as possible. And I'm sure we should not wait until the war is over. We should start implementing reforms agenda immediately, and that's what we're going to do as soon as possible.
You've sort of already answered it, but you know, Ukraine wants to be in the EU as soon as possible. At least that's the stated position of the government, and it appears like the wheels are in motion in that direction. So what role would Ukraine play within the EU, particularly as an energy player?
Well, Ukraine has made its strategic decision on the European pathway, and there are certain things that should be implemented before it happens, and the list is quite long. I'm sure Ukraine will do its best to make it faster than is expected from the outer world. Meanwhile, Ukraine will be a significant member of the future European Union and will bring more strength, more stability, and more power in different senses of the power, starting from energy and ending up with military. So I'm sure Ukraine will be a very important member of the future Europe.
OK. Oleksiy Chernyshov, CEO of Naftogaz, thank you very much for joining us on DW Business.
Thank you very much, Rob.